Thank you for watching. I do not recommend the website sciencemeetsreligion.org. And I'm going to give you specifics, and I'll put a link to it in the description of my video so you can see that I'm right about this. Or if you think I'm wrong, feel free to go to that website and see what they say, and then put the comments in my comments section. That website's divided up into sections it calls Q&A. One of them is theology Q&A, evolution Q&A evolution, Q&A philosophy, Q&A physics, Q&A theology, bibliography, LDS. That makes me think the people that do this website are members of my church, since LDS is an abbreviation for Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let's see. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to go through the list in order of the essays until I run out of time on the memory card on my camera. So this essay is, are there theological advantages to an evolutionary worldview? The writer of this, David H. Bailey, thinks so. He's wrong. Let's see. He wrote, a supreme being who governs via elegant natural laws. It's widely believed that the scientific worldview, including aspects well known to be red in tooth and claw, has only disadvantages from a theological point of view, and that a creationist or intelligent design worldview has only advantages from a theological point of view, but in stark contrast to the highly negative view of science that one reads in the creation and intelligent design literature, there are some definite advantages to the scientific view of creation. Alright, that essay is bad. That paragraph is bad. He is saying you have to believe a certain thing, or it's not a scientific view, and he is falsely accusing creationists of not liking science and not believing in science and saying anti-science things. What websites has he been going to for that? That's no, the prominent creation evangelists, the prominent creation groups are not anti-science. They love science. Well, one good thing David Bailey has done is he has given me an opportunity to obey Jesus' commandment to do good to them who despitefully use you and persecute you. Because Answers in Genesis is very eager to lie to you about whether I'm a Christian or not. But he lied about them, so I need to do good to Answers in Genesis by telling you that they really do believe in science. They're not anti-science. And just because you don't agree with somebody's conclusion about something does not mean you're anti-learning and... wow. In fact, Answers in Genesis is more in favor of science than those of the religion of evolutionism. Because the religion of evolutionism has been disproven long ago, and the people are still hanging on to it. And, like, if you go to a abortion rally, whether it's pro or against, which group is more likely to be talking about actual science, and which group is more likely to be chanting emotional chants that aren't based in reality? It's the creationists are more likely to be anti-abortion and actually talking about the science of what parts of the fetus develop at how many weeks along and what it actually looks like at how many weeks along. Whereas people who are against abortion are more likely to not be Answers in Genesis fans or believers, and they are much more likely to just chant, "My body, my right," when the deoxyribonucleic acid says otherwise. Okay, to begin with, scientists and theologians The present author included simply do not understand the resistance that is seen in the creationist intelligence design communities and elsewhere to the notion that God governs the universe via elegant and comprehensible laws. Oh my goodness! David Bailey, read Exodus chapter 20 and, what is it? Mosiah, somewhere between 12 and 16 is where Abinadi quotes the Ten Commandments. You've just lied twice in this essay, and I'm only into the second paragraph. Is there going to be one lie per paragraph? Answers in Genesis believes that God does, and virtually all the others, Institute for Creation Research, Kent Hovind, that God governs by, what's the exact wording he used? Elegant and comprehensible laws. Yes, that's why we can do science. Answers in Genesis. If Ken Ham were here, imagine I'm Ken Ham. Ken Ham would say something like, we can do science because God does govern by these laws. Now, govern and create are two different things. Your car keeps moving because of certain laws of physics. There are certain things you do to your car to keep it moving. Does that mean you know how Ford made the car? No. Creation, actually using something. Creation, governing, running something. Two different things. Some object to the Darwinian view of creation because of its reliance on competition. And then he gives a list of times in life and in this world where competition is a good thing. For example, in economics, do you want quality products to go purchase at the store? Do you want the store to get things to you for a low price? Then there should be competition, or they will not do that. Yes, he likes the word peer review, so peer review keeps science growing and keeps science good. Competition, if the U.S. Constitution is run properly, there are checks and balances. The legislature is supposed to not be too closely aligned with the president. They're supposed to be their own thing, and that helps the Constitution run better. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Competitive elections are essential to get good candidates doing things that the voters want. Okay, but none of those things have to do with whether it is a morally good thing to create that way. The competition, the resistance to Darwinian on that point is because God's not creating anything if he lets chaos happen and then whatever happens, happens. That's not creating. And that's a weak and stupid and powerless God if he can't just make it happen and he has to do it in such a slow, unhands-on way that it looks like he didn't do it. Alright, yep. So, oh boy. One important theological advantage, next subsection of the essay, to the evolutionary worldview was first noted by Aubrey Moore, a 19th century British theologian. He argued that evolution could be seen as a partial solution to the age-old problem of why suffering and evil exist. Darwin, quote, Darwin appeared and under the guise of a foe did the work of a friend, unquote. Noted biologist and Dominican priest Francisco Ayala similarly argues, quote, as floods and drought were a necessary consequence of the fabric of the physical world, predators and parasites, dysfunctions and diseases were a consequence of the evolution of life. They were not a result of deficient or malevolent design. If evolution by natural selection is Darwin's answer to Paley, it is also the solution to the last prong of the problem of evil, unquote. Wow, no! This is especially painful for me to read because we in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I think this guy might be a fellow saint, have an answer to the problem of evil. A better answer than anybody else. That answer is we lived with Father in heaven, and we needed to have experiences so we would grow spiritually. Experiences we could not have had with Him where He lives in the perfect world that He lives in. And that's why we got sent down here where God knew Adam and Eve would take of the fruit. The fall was part of the plan. God foresaw it. God planned on it. God did not get outmaneuvered by Adam and Eve, by the devil, when Adam and Eve took the fruit. Sorry, I'm fired up and I've got to go to work later today, so I don't have time to perfect this video. But I'm really fired up and so eager to make it. Now, even if somebody doesn't have that perspective, the fall explains it. The fall, Adam and Eve ate forbidden fruit. They were cast out of the garden. And they weren't just cast out. God told them, thorns and thistles will grow and you will earn your bread by the sweat of your brow. That means they had it easy. The food that would grow easily, that would be good food, grew easily before. There weren't thorns and thistles to poke them and have them step on them and be ouching their feet before the fall. That is the answer to evil. Why doesn't this... I'm feeling very tempted to use less kind, descriptive words for the writer of this essay right now. Why doesn't this guy realize that or see that? It makes me wonder if the only knowledge he has of Institute for Creation Research and Ken Ham and Kent Hovind is lying essays by opponents of theirs, which is inexcusable to use as a source, especially for somebody from a religion that has a lot of people lying about it, that should get him thinking, not everyone who says something's bad is giving us accurate information. I need to go to the source. Or is the author of this essay encouraging people who want to learn about my church to go to our antagonists instead of us? Okay, so Darwinian evolution does not solve the problem of evil. It makes God evil for creating in such a painful way. It makes God seem stupid. You're accusing God of being stupid and powerless. If you are a believer in God who's believing in theistic evolution. When I say theistic evolution, I don't mean you give the answer in your science classroom that you need to get an A in the class. I mean, you're at home, away from your science classroom, you're at home, you're not being a professor, and you actually believe this stuff. You're at home being a professor, you're at home, you're not on the clock, and your family member puts a comment on Facebook that points out scientific evidences and reasons to not believe the religion of evolutionism, and you defend it. Okay, next essay to look at today. Updated January 1st, 2020. Oh, this is less than a month old. Are there benefits to religious belief and participation? Okay, and recently several books written by prominent authors have been published that attack religious belief as a pernicious delusion. The four most prominent authors are, who are the four horsemen of atheism? You probably know if you're up to date on the subject. Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens. In his book, prominent biologist Richard Dawkins asked us to, quote, to imagine, quote, a world with no religion, ... no suicide bombers, no 9/11, no 7/7, no crusades, no witch hunts, no gunpowder plot, no Indian partition, no Israeli/Palestinian wars, no Serb/Croat/Muslim massacres, no persecution of Jews as Christ killers, no Northern Ireland troubles, no honor killings, and no, he put troubles in quotes, and he put honor killings in quotes. No shiny-suited, bouffant-haired televangelists fleecing gullible people of their money. the author of this essay seems to be denouncing that quote. There are religious people who have done bad things in world history. Some recent, some further away. But everything in that essay, everything in that quote from Richard Dawkins are bad things. Richard Dawkins was right to denounce those things. So why bring it up like he's shouldn't denounce those things? Is David H. Bailey in honor? Is he in favor of honor killings? Televangelist fleecing people? Christopher Hitchens declares that religion is, quote, violent, irrational, intolerant, allied to racism, tribalism, and bigotry, invested in ignorance and hostile to free inquiry, contemptuous of women, and coercive towards children, end quote. There are religions that do that. So why bring it up like there's no... He quotes Victor J. Stringer, he cites Victor J. Stringer, and he claims that he rejected claims that there were any health or social benefits from religious belief. All right. Then, to begin with, there are certainly valid points to... Yeah. To begin with, while there are certainly valid points in the writings of these scholars, they have also drawn considerable criticism, not just from religious fundamentalists and apologists, but also from some very knowledgeable scholars in the field of science and religion. Writers who, in many cases, are not particularly religious themselves. Okay, so he's making a big deal about there are benefits. Okay, he goes through a list of 10 benefits of various increased life expectancy and less negative things happening in people's life that are religious. In summary, contrary to claims of some, there are real and measurable benefits to religious belief and participation, and more generally to living a principled, purposeful, charitable life. These benefits have been documented in study after study for many years. There is no suggestion in this data of supernatural effects, but the natural effects are real enough. Okay, so you do get benefit out of religion. This article, this essay, I don't find as troubling as the others in overall, but I am troubled at the start of it. He seems to be denouncing those people who were denouncing bad things that some religious people have done. I didn't see him anywhere in here say anything like, well, Richard Dawkins denounced the bad things done by religion. We also denounce those bad things, but he should not group all religions together or something like that. But he doesn't give any kind of credit to Richard Dawkins for identifying bad things religious people have done. Yeah. He has a quote from Michael Shermer in the section of his essay where he is going through all the good things about religion. But, wow. In general, I don't like seeing quotes from Michael Shermer because he has no integrity, because he calls himself a skeptic, but he's not skeptical of the more ridiculous or more impossible or improbable claims of the religion that he promotes as opposed to other claims. Michael Shermer should not call himself a skeptic when somebody claims they know what happened 14 billion years ago. That's when it's time to be skeptical and say, well, so nothing caused all this stuff to happen. Show me it happening now. Okay, next essay. I'm probably not going to get around to the one I read yesterday that got me really fired up. I guess I've got something for my to-do list tomorrow morning. Several of the new atheists... Let's see, this one is titled, Is the Bible Supported by Modern Archaeology? Several of the new atheist schools of writers dismiss the Bible as without scientific foundations. Richard Dawkins, in his book, The God Delusion, dismisses much of the Bible as fiction. The writer of this essay dismisses much of the Bible as fiction too, so why is he quoting Richard Dawkins? And it seems like he's trying to denounce Richard Dawkins for saying the same thing he says. Similar to Christopher Hitchens in his book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, asserts modern archaeology has disproved most of the older biblical history, saying none of the religious myth has any truth to it or in it. Hitchens subsequently qualifies his statement to refer mainly to the Exodus and pre-Exodus stories, but he also remains highly skeptical about the historicity of much of the Old Testament. Chris Sosa extends this to the New Testament. Quote, the church... I see Jesus Christ, and I want to say church because the name of my church is Church of Jesus Christ. Quote, the Jesus of Christianity is clearly a mythological figure. Okay, so only one. Here, the writer of this article has a paragraph encouraging flexibility. Okay, just as there is no point to claiming that biological or physical evidence proves that evolution is false. No, if it doesn't happen now, if we see mutations make things get worse or not add new information, creative information, then that's evidence against it. So, yes, there is. Oh, man. Brother Bailey, why are you being a fence sitter? Isn't your crotch a little sore from being on both sides of the fence? Let's see. So he cites a list of things that were once claimed and proven to be created or bad archaeology and not proven. Noah's Ark. He claims anyone who's claimed to have found Noah's Ark has been refuted. But that huge boat really existed, so maybe somebody did really find it. Inscribed pomegranate. Let's see, there's the James ossuary, a chalk box with the inscription, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Claims that was a forgery. Jehoash tablet, tomb with bones of Jesus' family, was rejected by an knowledgeable archaeologist. The Gospel of Jesus' wife was denounced as a forgery. So this is admittedly very little. There is very little evidence to support the Old Testament history. But from an archaeological point of view, there is no way scientific research can comment one way or the other on the existence of an individual such as Abraham, who, according to the biblical account, left his home in Ur, probably near modern-day Baghdad in Iraq, to head to modern-day Palestine. There's no modern-day Palestine. There's modern-day Israel. Genesis tells of Jacob's son Joseph being sold. Yeah. Okay, so he is saying that there's a limit to how much we can know about the past from archaeology, so it's hard to disprove. Okay, I don't recommend this website, but a stop clock is right twice a day. The clock is stopped on this essay. Let's see. Okay, the biblical chronology of the Exodus is problematic. Yeah, I take that back. Okay. I'm sure the Exodus happened exactly the way the Bible says, as far as it is translated correctly. there's a limit to how much archaeological evidence there's going to be for things. Things rot. Things that aren't made of stone deteriorate. And maybe embarrassed Egyptians didn't brag about losing millions of slaves. Hey, ever think of that? The Egyptians might not have wanted to write embarrassing history about themselves. Especially hard to, when it's so time-consuming and expensive to chisel things out. He lists 15 archaeological discoveries that do match up with the Old Testament. Okay. Yep. So, my position on that is there's limits to how much archaeology can find about the past because things rot. And so you're going to have a hard time really claiming that you've disproven something from the past. Especially when archaeologists put their interpretation on what they find. Let's see. Then he lists 9 New Testament archaeological finds. Archaeological finds, in other words, that help to support stories and locations from the New Testament. Okay, well, this essay has some good points to be looked at. Yep. So there is archaeological evidence for some of the things in the Bible. It's not completely disproven. So some atheists do overplay their hand. Oh boy. Next essay. Can biblical archaeology be used to date creation? Yes, if you believe the Bible is true. No, that's not what he wrote, though. Introduction. The Bible is accepted as an inspired chronicle of mankind's search for existence, meaning, and moral guidance by virtually all Christian denominations and also the Jewish faith, whose Bible is the Old Testament. Even among those who assert the Bible to be the literal Word of God, most are willing to accept that the Bible has some imperfections, such as translation errors, copyist errors, omissions, and questionable inclusions. And in any event, the Bible was never intended to be read primarily as a scientific or historical treatise. But others insist on having the Bible as perfect, complete, and inerrant repository of God's Word, and to them, modern science is an affront to the authority of the Bible. Okay, so can we trust the Bible to at least get it close on when things got started? I say yes. His main argument against that is that there are 2 basic lines of translation of the Old Testament that do have some slight contradictions. Note that the time period from Adam to Abraham is 1,946 years in the Masoretic text, but 3,412 years in the Septuagint, a difference of 1,466 years. The Samaritan text, another early Jewish source, gives this period as 2,377 years. Okay. We can't be extremely precise in this, but you're confusing me, and I question if you really claim you can trust the Bible, and I feel tempted to say you don't really believe the Bible, but how can you say you believe a book that you say is getting it that wrong? If you say these dates that are earliest a little under 2,000 years and oldest about 3,000 and a half, about halfway between 3,000 and 4,000, how can you say you believe that book if you say it's not thousands of years but millions of years? So maybe we can't take the Bible, use it to be precise, but we can use it to get close to the right number. Yeah, and he lists some of the slight discrepancies, like a king was 18 years old in one book when he began to reign, but he was only 8 in another book. But still, comparing 18 years and 8 years is not thousands of years and 8 years. So we can still be pretty close about that, and I don't see how there's room to be a believer in the Bible and believe that hundreds of thousands of years ago the first half ape, half man, in other words the first black man according to that religion, read Darwin stuff, and that's what he said, a black man is less evolved, came about. I don't think you can hold those two things. Got about 5 minutes left on this. I'm giving quick summaries of these. Alright, so thumbs down on that essay. What was the ancient Bible cosmology? Much of the perceived conflict between science and religion centers on how one should view the Bible's account of creation. The vast majority of scientists and theologians are willing to accept the fact that the Bible was never intended to be read primarily or even secondarily as a scientific text, and even among those who insist that God played a crucial role in creation, most are willing to accept that this creation proceeded through a mostly natural process involving forces such as tectonic shifts and biological evolution. No, that's not creating. That's not God creating anything. The Bible's lying if it tells us God created and biological evolution, as the atheists tell the story, is how it happened. Those two are incompatible, but not according to David Bailey. Okay. He quotes Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis. Alright. I don't agree 100% with Ken Ham. The difference between Ken Ham's interpretation of the Bible and mine, the most fundamental difference between us is I accept the Bible might have lost things because the Bible's not my God. But like Ken Ham, I believe we can get some good information from it, and it's not worthless. David Bailey apparently looks at the Bible as worthless. There's no point in reading any of it. It's 100% symbolic. If he's going to say that about part of the Bible, maybe he should say it about the whole Bible, and maybe there was no Jesus Christ. If there was no Adam, then why believe there was a Jesus Christ when the scriptures are clear about there having been an Adam? Ancient Hebrew cosmology. In fact, numerous biblical passages state or affirm the geocentric cosmology that prevailed in much of the ancient world until Greek and Roman times, and of course, which is not fully modernized until Copernicus and Galileo. 1. The earth itself is flat and immovable, encompassed by a circle like a coin, and set on a foundation of pillars. Above the earth stands a firmament, later thought to be a system of crystalline spheres, a few hundred, or at least at most a few thousand feet above the earth, on which the stars, planets, and moon revolve. Heaven, or the realm of God, is a set of chambers above the firmament. Above the firmament in heavenly chambers lies the upper seas, or the waters of the firmament. Below the earth and the underworld lie below seas, or the great deep. Okay. And just because some of the people thought that back then does not mean we can't get any truth out of the Bible, and maybe that was symbolic. Here are just a few of the many biblical passages that reflect this ancient cosmology, and he has 13 quotes of them. In summary, while creationists and intelligent design writers even today teach that the Bible is absolutely inerrant, and by implication that Genesis must be read as a complete and technically precise scientific treatise, abundant of evidence within the Bible itself shows that such notions are indefensible. Once one backs away from a literal, inerrant approach to the Bible, most of the difficulties that are typically mentioned in the context of science and religion either disappear or fade into relative insignificance. Oh boy, no. A lot of these things he quotes here are not meant literally. The pillars of the earth are his, and the Lord's hath set them upon them. That's because when somebody builds a building, you see them set the roof on the pillars of the building. And so it's giving God credit for putting it together. It's not saying literally pillars. And about the sun, moon, and the stars, we look up and we see them up there. That the Old Testament writers were probably not trying to help people physically get to the stars. So it's okay to say they're all up there. And not say, well, this one's so many billions of light years away, that one's so many billions of light years away. If you're not actually planning to go, imagine I live in California, and you are not actually planning to go to Asia sometime, and I'm in a hurry. Would it be lying to say, yep, it's all that way? China, Japan, Mongolia, Iran, it's all that way. And not get picky and nitpicky about, well, China's this many miles away and Mongolia is that many more miles than China. That's what God is doing, I believe, when the Old Testament talks about the sun, moon, and the stars being in the same place and just being there. Alright, that's it for today. How far did I get? Alright, I guess tomorrow morning I've got something to do to get to the thing that I read yesterday that really got me fired up. Thank you for watching. You have a good day.